All right, guys, welcome back. We're ready to move ahead with the second option for Q1, our third time through. It's a question on domestic spaces, so we will attack it here and see what we can figure out, okay? This time you were given two pictures. One is a plan and one is an interior. So I would really expect you to use evidence from both of those as you talk about your response, okay? So now let's look at this. It says the thoughtful design of domestic spaces helps to create the appropriate atmosphere and setting for ideas patrons hope to convey to visitors who will access the space. There you go. All right, we know what the question is about. It's going to be domestic spaces, not palaces, not the Colosseum. These are places where people live, right? The views shown above show a plan and interior view of one of the domestic structures from your image set. Select and identify another domestic structure from the image set that engages design and decoration to convey an idea about the patron to guests visiting the structure. You may choose from the list below, or you may select any other relevant image from the set. All right, this time the door is open. But notice it didn't say any other relevant work. I mean, that's okay. We're basically going to be able to choose anything we want to from the image set, most likely. Just watch if there's anything special that crops up there, okay? We now down here, let's see, we've got you guys probably know this is the House of the Vetii, right, in Pompeii. We have the choice of Villa Savoie, and we have Monticello that we could talk about, where we're really talking about how the space is designed and then how the space is decorated, okay? Now, there are more images of the House of the Vetii in the image set. One of them shows you a painted room, right, that has fresco on it. So I want you to think about that extra image as like contextual evidence if you have the chance to talk about it. Visual evidence is going to have to be from what we see of what's given to us. So just keep that in mind as you're writing too. Excuse me. Using specific visual evidence, here we go. Describe, explain, and it looks why. That last part looks kind of long compared to the other ones we've seen, so I'm going to take a good hard look at that. Okay, I've got my verbs. Now my connector words. How, right? Important little words that help me know. Oh, there's an and, both. And an and. Okay. Explain the decorative that are different. How. Okay, there's a how. So we could be talking about function. We could be talking about form. We haven't quite gotten to context yet. There's why. I bet we just got there. Okay. So we have to know something about this work. Let's talk about and or. We get to choose a little bit. And or patron or designer. Okay, well, that's nice. We've got like an open door there. Use specific contextual. Oh, there's a big both and a selected. We're okay. So now I'm going to go back in. Since the VE is sticking out here at the front, I'm going to go ahead and say with VE. This says and or VE. CE, contextual evidence. You guys remember that is subject matter and form, while this is function and history, right? Context. Okay, let's see what we have to use. Specific contextual evidence down here. So we now know we're going to have to do a little visual, a little contextual. Okay. Now, what do we got to do? Describe how the arrangement of space. Now that means the flow of space from room to room, right? We could be talking about the entry, the atrium. We go into the peristyle. We have rooms off the peristyle for dining, right? Or entertaining guests. So we know these guys really wanted this to be both a place of residence, but also a place of business where they could entertain clients. Remember the patron-client relationship there. So that might help you understand the flow of the space. Okay. We'll have to do the same thing with Villa Savoie and Monticello. You guys remember Villa Savoie is the machine for living, and Monticello is Jefferson's home. He really wanted that to be a more democratic idea of what a house should be. So we'll talk about his neoclassicism and stuff here in just a second, but let's figure this out. Okay, arrangement of space. Within a domestic setting. Okay, arrangement of space facilitates patrons' needs within a domestic setting. What did the designers need this space to be? Okay. All right, we do that for both works. Let's see, evidence, and let's see, explain the decoration. All right, decorative details that are different. Okay, so that's a difference right there, sneaking in there. You see what they did? And how they convey a specific message, right? Okay. Explain why this arrangement of space and or its decorative details were chosen. And you could say the patron or the designer. So this is really more the context of the history around the times, and we've got to use evidence for both of these works. Okay, so I think with that labeled, you can underline this. It's really about why the patron and designer chose it to communicate those ideas. Why was it the best thing for them to use to say what they wanted to say? Let's go in here, describe for both this and that, T1, T2, okay? Use specific visual or contextual language for each structure. Explain the decorative details that are different and how they convey a specific message to the guests. I think that's your T3. Explain why this arrangement of space or its details were chosen by the patron and or its designer to communicate ideas to guests. Okay, so they basically have to communicate something to the people who are coming to the house, right? You could say, and they don't specify difference or similarity here. So the door's open to say they both did this similarly or they both did this differently. Okay, so I'm going to say that answering that question is your T4. And then using specific contextual evidence from both the required work and your selected work, that maps out to like a T6, right? 6 points there. Everybody agree? I'm taking a look at this. Now, if I map this out, okay, you already kind of know T1, we're talking about the spatial arrangement, T1. And there's 3 things that we want to say about each one. How were they spatially arranged to fit the patron's needs, right? So you could describe a lot of details, but if they're not on the details about why the space was set up that way, then you might be wasting your time. So we might need to write ourselves a little note here. How does the space, what are the space details, the spatial details, how do they serve the patron? Just a little reminder, right? And you do that again over here. So now we have contextually explain the decorative that are different. All right, so they're going to do this differently. And now we're not talking about like the space. We're talking about how the space is decorated. Okay, and they're decorated differently, right? Okay. So now we got to answer a question, explain why this arrangement of space and or its decorative details. We get to choose either one. And this is where, hey, contextual evidence, you get to write about how this place was painted, if that helps you a little bit more. There was a lot of symbolic imagery that might be helpful. If you wanted to use this image, you guys remember this is where the lock boxes were. And they were there up front to show the confidence that APAH had in displaying their wealth in such an elaborate house, right? So, okay, that means that we have this situation going on. Okay, you might be able to make this an idea that is similar or different since they didn't specify, right? But they both tried to sell an idea, and there's something in their design and decoration that'll help you make that argument, right? So here's T3, here's T4, answer the question. T5, back it up with context. T6, back it up with context, okay? So hopefully that will help you. I hope that you're getting the same structure I am. I'll look and see what your responses are, but there is an interesting question, okay? If you, again, are given 2 images, I would highly suggest that you make yourself use some visual evidence from what you're given. Sometimes people tend to look at the type and go, hey, we weren't given any pictures, and it just becomes like a run-on history essay, okay? So use what you're given, and that will make your response stronger. All right, I'll be back here with another review of another question in just a minute.